What's up, guys? This is Rey-Jay back with another video. And in this one, I want to break down what's happening with the overall market as we have new updates coming out. I'm going to talk about why tomorrow is going to be a very important day as we have the FOMC minutes coming out in the afternoon, not to mention other factors involving technical analysis that could cause big volatility that's coming to the markets, especially for SPY and the QQQ. Just know that I am not a financial planner, so take nothing I'm saying as financial advice whatsoever. And also, if you guys can, please check out my Moomoo link that's down below or sign up with my QR code that's right over here. If you sign up for Moomoo and deposit $100, you're going to get $20 of free Nvda stock. If you deposit $2,000, you're going to get $50 worth of the stock. Deposit $10,000 to get $300 worth, and deposit $50,000 to get $1,000 of free Nvda. You're also going to qualify for an 8.1% APY in uninvested cash. That includes a 4.1% APY base rate plus a 4% APY extra for 3 months. And the offer ends very soon. So if you guys want those free Nvda shares, please check out my links down below. Anyways, now let's talk about what's happening with the market. So one thing worth mentioning is that the market tried to push to new all-time highs a couple of days ago. We saw SPY hit this, 646 area, but instead of continuing to break out, we're actually showing signs of rejection because we had this upwards channel, and SPY for the first time started to break structure right here. Right before we'd hit this trend line, we'd bounce. This time we came down towards the 20 EMA. Instead of holding above 642, we actually saw this dip below it a bit. Now, our next support is going to be at the 50 EMA. That is basically this yellow line right here, which is currently in the 638 area. Now, we're going to see, can we get some kind of bounce here? Can SPY try to get back into this chop zone? And if we do, will we just keep running, or do we get another rug pull? And then do we end up forming sort of like an inverse cup and handle, which takes us all the way down towards 633 very, very soon? I'll give you guys some answers about this because we do have some big catalysts coming out for tomorrow that could end up affecting things. But in all honesty, the market is showing weakness. If you look at the QQQ, for example, we're showing some weakness as well. We're very close to this resistance becoming support at 566.5. We could test this and see if we bounce off that or not before continuing to dip. Even if we do dip a little bit more than bounce, this could also be resembling a head and shoulders, right? And this could even be dipping more. So I'll talk more about SPY and the QQQ in a lot more details in just a couple of minutes. I first want to talk about what's happening with the data. So tomorrow is going to be a very important day, okay? Tomorrow is going to be Wednesday, August 20th, 2025. In the morning, we have some very, very minor mortgage data and crude oil data, which is all very, very minor, nothing too significant. But at 11:30 a.m. and 1 p.m., we have the 17-week bill auction, the 20-year bond auction coming out. These sometimes cause some volatility, so be ready for that just in case. And then finally, at 2 o'clock p.m., Eastern Standard Time, this is many hours after the market opens, we have what's known as the FOMC minutes. So why is this so significant? What is this going to tell us? Well, the FOMC minutes is not the same thing as FOMC, so please remember that distinction. FOMC minutes is basically just a paper report about FOMC where we get more insights from different Fed officials. It's going to let us know what the Fed is saying, what Fed officials want to cut. Are they going to be leaning more towards a cut or not? I think this is going to be very, very important. It's going to likely cause a lot of volatility. Now, the common ground right now is that the Fed is most likely going to give us some kind of cut. Currently, there's about a 13.9% chance the Fed is going to keep rates the same in September during FOMC. There's an 86+% chance the Fed is going to give us some kind of cut, and that could be very, very important. If the Fed cuts, that could cause volatility as well for the markets, but this depends on what kind of cut are we getting. Is it a cut because of the fact that things are breaking, because unemployment numbers are just not looking good, and because of weakness in the payrolls data? Or is the Fed going to be hesitant because of inflation? We'll see, just to be safe. But that's going to be very, very impactful. So I do expect a big move at 2 p.m. tomorrow. So be ready, guys. This could cause a very, very big move in the S&P 500. Now, for the fear and greed index, greed is making up the majority of sentiment. There's a lot of greed right now in the markets. We're going to see if that stays or not. Momentum is neutral, so the market's not super greedy, super fearful. It's in the middle right now. It hasn't really shifted yet because we just saw a small move. This wasn't like a massive sell-off. We just sold off by about like 6 points on SPY. It's not that bad. The put to call option ratio is at extreme greed, and typically when we're at these extremes, this is when the market forms the top. Typically, that's what happens historically. And that could be a sign we're about to see a big increase in volatility. The VIX is also at a very, very critical level. Typically, when it's between 12 and 14, it likes to form bottoms and bounces. Are we about to see a big VIX bounce? We're going to have to see just to be safe. Now, remember that during this time, I'm going to actually pull this up right here. We see a lot of volatility, a lot of like rocky price action in the S&P 500 during the months of August and September. Typically, August and September are red months, but sometimes you have instances where August is green, September is red. But the last 3 years, what happened was, or maybe not the last 3 years, the last 5 years that went like this, we basically had a green August and then red September. Green August, red September. Then we were red in August and September 3 years ago, 2 years ago, and last year, red for all those months. You guys can see how we tend to see a lot of volatility during those times. So if we get a green August, typically September is red at least the majority of the times in the last couple of decades. And at the same time, if we get like a flat / red August, sometimes, and we do typically do see September become more red. September is the most red month of the year typically, and there's a good chance we might see some downside during that period. And we're getting very close to September. It's about 2 weeks away or less. That could be very, very important. Some more news that's worth mentioning is that we had the Home Depot announce its earnings, and unfortunately, we saw them miss on EPS and revenue. Their margins got affected by external factors, but the good news is they kept their guidance. That's why the share price didn't dump too much. For Wednesday, which is tomorrow, we have Target and TJ Maxx announcing earnings in the morning. And on Thursday, we have Walmart alongside Ross Dress for Less announcing their earnings, so be ready for lots of retail earnings. Some updates involving President Trump. President Trump is saying that he wants to discuss negotiations between Russia and Ukraine, and he wants to arrange a meeting with Putin and Zelensky to once again try to put an end to this war that's been going on for too long. I want to see the war come to an end, and we're going to see what ends up happening. But for now, President Trump is meeting up with lots of officials. I say this because President Trump has been very distracted by this, and he hasn't been talking as much about the tariffs. He did say last week that he wants to impose the 200 to 300% tariffs on semiconductors either this week or next week. He is saying he's going to be doing it soon, so be ready in case President Trump says that. That could cause a big move in the markets. On top of this, the S&P Global Ratings came out. They have reaffirmed their AA plus credit rating for the US because they're saying there's going to be lots of revenue coming in thanks to President Trump's tariffs, which will help offset the tax cuts authorized by the big beautiful bill. That's what they're saying so far. That's their opinion. Not really affecting the market too much though. What has also been affecting things is that President Trump has expanded his 50% steel and aluminum tariffs to include an additional 407 products and product types. That's another very important piece of news. Here he is with the American steelworkers. That's also very important. Our Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent, has been talking about how he wants to see more rates. And he's talking about how the tariffs are going to be bringing in lots of revenue. He also said the U.S. is negotiating with China. There's going to be a big deal coming, and that they're going to help use the tariff revenue to essentially pay off a lot of the national debt. That's what he's saying so far. That's some important news. So with that being said, what do I think is going to happen moving forward to the markets? It's very, very simple. This is a very, very simple chart to dissect. So let's break this down. So it depends on your key levels. And I'm more of like a levels trader. I always talk about the importance of paying attention to key levels. SPY has support at 638. Okay. 638 is this resistance right here becoming support. It's also where the 50 EMA happens to be. If we bounce here, we could try to go back up to like 642. But even if we do try to bounce a bit, we're going to see if we get some kind of rejection move, then eventually start dipping back down like this. That's another possibility, and that would help complete this head and shoulders. But if you're a bear on SPY, okay, you want to see us fail at 638. And if we can't hold this for another day or two, I think we easily dump to 633 or below. So that's the more bearish case. I think that we're going to be heading for 633, but we're going to see if we get some kind of bounce first. We might try to bounce first before we end up coming down again like this. We're going to have to see just to be safe. What could help the markets is the FOMC minutes, especially if lots of Fed officials say they want to see the Fed cuts. That is a very, very stronger possibility. There's an 86% chance of that happening. So what I think is going to happen is going into tomorrow, we might see like a dip, a bounce, and some consolidation. Maybe we try to bounce a little bit thanks to the FOMC minutes. But then this balance may be short-lived because of, a lot of news coming out. On Friday, we also have Jerome Powell giving a speech. That could also shake markets if he starts to talk about the high inflation, which once again hurts the claims that the Fed is going to cut. We don't know for sure. We know that Jerome Powell is known for being very uncertain. That could affect things. So maybe we get a temporary bounce, then we start dipping lower. I think that's the most likely possibility. A move like this, where we try to bounce back up towards like the low 640s, then we end up dipping again because of seasonality and also because of all the external factors. We'll see if President Trump announces more tariffs on semiconductors or whatever the tariff news is. Whatever the factor is, there could be a bit more downside coming, some consolidation. Then we'll see if we get a temporary bounce to hold up, and then this may be followed by more downside. That is what I'm predicting for now. But keep in mind, don't just solely trade based off my predictions. I can't predict everything the market will do. Watch your levels. If we lose 638 and we can't hold 638 on the 4-hour close, we're looking for more downside. If we get back above 642, we could try to bounce a bit more. That's going to be your range between 638 and 642. I think my best prediction is that we might consolidate tomorrow morning, then balance for 642 temporarily, but then it might not last, and we could see another leg down, forming an inverse cup and handle, taking us right back down like that. That's my prediction for now. On the QQQ, we're making lower highs, lower highs, lower highs. We were talking about this yesterday. I even mentioned that tech was looking weaker. This also resembles a head and shoulders on the QQQ. Now, we're approaching this resistance becoming support at 566. So we have a nice support zone between 566 and 568. We're going to have to see if we could try to bounce off that level or not. So it's quite simple. So you guys will notice that this 566 to 568 zones where we have this resistance becoming support. We could dip in this range and we'll see if we rebound or not towards like 572. Then we'll see if we reject and continue to dump just like this. That would be once again completing this head and shoulders and causing some more downside. That's how you're going to be basically going about this. If we lose 566 right off the bat, we're going to continue to fall back down to 560. If we, however, bounce and get back above 574, we could try to get back up to 578. That's going to be another key level. My gut tells me that we might be trying to base between 566 and 568. Then we'll see if we get a temporary rebound for our EMAs. And then after that, we could be dumping right back down. That's going to be very, very key, at least for how we end up moving. For the IWM Russell 2000, we're making lower highs. We're going to see if we hold right here. So we have this resistance becoming support at 225. That's also where the 50 EMA happens to be. So we have a double support, a confluence of support. So we could test 225 on the IWM. If we lose this, I think we dump towards like 220. But if we hold this, we might try a bounce like this. And then we'll see if we end up turning back down like that. It might not bounce that much. It might just be like a smaller bounce towards like 228. Then we'll see if we turn back down afterwards. I think that's going to be very key for how we end up moving. Notice that on ES, okay, ES is testing this zone right here. Resistance becoming support around 64.25, so look for some chop. Then an attempt to push to 64.50, and we'll see if we make a lower high before we continue to dump. So watch that very closely as we have a slanted head and shoulders. Now, if we get back above 64.58, we're looking for a bigger push higher, right back up towards this next resistance. But if we reject here, we could be turning back down towards new lows, so we'll have to see how it goes. I anticipate some consolidation and a push for like 64.50, and then we'll see if we reject or not as time goes on. For NQ, we're also dipping right here. We have this resistance becoming support around 23,425. If we lose support here, we could be dumping to 23,288. But if this holds, we could be bouncing for 23,500, and then we'll see if we start dumping back down towards our 200 EMA. But nonetheless, tech is showing a lot of weakness. Might be a small bounce before we continue to fall. That's what I think is going to likely happen. Bitcoin looks like it's going to be dipping all the way down towards 111,000. Now, it might bounce off this support around 113,000 first to retest 114,000, and then it could be dipping back down to 111,000. A move like that looks very probable to me on Bitcoin. Tesla looks like it's just in a channel. I know people were talking about how this is like an inverse head and shoulders, but I don't really see that right now because we're losing our 50 EMA. We're looking kind of weak. Tesla might retest 325, try to rebound a bit, and then continue to fall like this, forming this flag. We need to get back above 335 and then 340. If we break those, we're looking for this 346 area to be retested. But as of right now, there's no confirmation of a breakout. So we're on a downtrend for the short term. Follow the price action, follow the trend. Might bounce a bit to retest the upper trend line before it rejects and continues to fall for like 320 flat. Nvidia is looking weak here. This is dipping quite a bit. I think we got some negative news. This is what's leading the market down. It might come down to fill that gap around 173. Then we'll see if it bounces back up to like 178, and then we're going to see if it rejects again off that. As you can tell, we have a nice looking chop zone, but this could also be a distributive pattern, and then that could lead to a small bounce before we see a massive rejection. So be ready, guys. Nvidia is showing some weakness to me. Apple, same thing, right? It's showing a little bit of weakness. It's very choppy right now. It's not dipping with the markets. So this could shop around a bit, around 230. Then we're going to see if this dips back down to like 225. I do see some weakness. It is trying to hold 230, so we'll see if we chop here and then try to bounce a little bit before we start to dip right back down. On Netflix, we have support around 1200. We could be retesting 1225, and we'll see if we reject off this or not. If it rejects, we could be dipping lower. Notice this resembles a head and shoulders now. We may get a temporary bounce to form that right shoulder around 1228. Then we'll see if we turn back down on Netflix. On MSTR, we're looking very weak. We were talking about some downside yesterday. I said it might bounce a bit before rejecting. Notice we're rejecting so far, and we could be trying to retest these lows over here. So it's looking pretty weak. I see there's a gap to fill around the low 318s. Could we bounce a bit? Sure, but then we're going to likely continue to fall for 318. Celsius is coming down as well. We're watching this imbalance. Once you fill these imbalances around like the 59 area, let's see if we bounce a bit before we continue to fall back down to 58. For Supermicro, we're showing weakness, big rejection on Supermicro. We were talking about that in my video yesterday. We might retest the resistance here if we get some kind of balance move around 44 before we continue to fall for 42 or below. Palantir's at support at 154. We got to hold 154, or else we're dipping to 150 flat. So watch and see if we get a small bounce before we continue to fall to 154. Rivian's on a downtrend. We're kind of rejecting here. We're going to see if we get back above essentially 12.5. If not, we might kind of test this and consolidate before we dip right back down. For SoFi, we're rejecting. We have a double top rejection. We're going to see if we get back above 23. If not, we could kind of test this and reject and continue to fall back down to 22. For AMD, we got a rejection right here. We're dipping quite a bit. We could be dipping back down to like 160. I would not be surprised if we continue to fall near 160. Then we'll see if we bounce just a bit. We could be retesting some key fib levels. I think our EMA is going to trend downwards towards like 170. And we'll see if we continue to fall after that. Look for a dip and a bounce near 160, and we'll see how it ends up going. For ARM, we're showing weakness. We're on a downtrend unless we get back above 138. It's been downtrending for quite a while, so it may continue to fall back down towards 130. For PayPal, we're showing weakness unless we get back above 70. I favor consolidation and then a dip back down towards 68 or below. Coinbase is rejecting here. We have kind of like a head and shoulders. Unless we get back above 325, we're favoring kind of like a small rebound around 308. Then a move right back down to 294. Amazon has 226 as our support. We're going to see if that holds. If not, we're looking for 226 as support. If it doesn't hold, we might consolidate and start dipping back down to 222. For Meta, we're also on a downtrend. We're going to see if we get back above 760. If not, I think this is still favoring downside. We might be visiting like this zone right here around 735. Might consolidate before it dips for like 735 or below, so be careful. Google's range bound. If we break 203, we're looking for a push for 205. If we lose 200, we're dipping to 198. I think it consolidates a bit in this range. Then we'll see if it dips lower or not. Microsoft's on a downtrend. We were talking about this for a while. It's on a downtrend. Lower highs, lower lows, lower highs, lower lows, lower highs, lower lows. It's just dumping. I'm going to be watching this level right here. This is very close to this like support right here around 508. We're going to see if this holds. If it does hold, we could bounce a little bit for essentially like 512. And then if it doesn't hold, we could be dipping towards like 501. I think we bounce a bit for like 512 to 515, but then we could be dipping back down to the lows. So I do see some weakness on Microsoft leading tech down. So a lot of tech stocks are showing some weakness, which is no surprise. DJT may also dip a little bit more towards like 16.95. The VIX is in an interesting place. So I see an inverse head and shoulders forming. What I think is going to happen is something like this. We have like an inverse head and shoulders, right? But here's the thing. We might not just break out like this. It's likely not going to happen. I think we might dip a little bit on the VIX because the market's going to rally a little bit. Maybe the FOMC minutes help us bounce just a little bit, a couple of points up for SPY and the QQQ. But then this might start to break out with Jerome Powell's speech on Friday, or something else might cause us to pump. And then we could see the breakout later on. That's what I think is going to likely happen, in my opinion. The 10-year is flat. It's going to depend on FOMC minutes and what Jerome Powell says tomorrow. The dollar, we're going to see if this breaks out higher to cause the market to dip more. Same thing with crude, it's kind of flat. So let's see if we get a temporary bounce tomorrow. I think there is potential in SPY and the QQQ, especially thanks to the FOMC minutes. But if we just fall past support, we could dump from here. My opinion is that I'd like to see us bounce first, retest the chop zone, and then eventually start dipping back down to make new lows like this. I think a move like this could be coming. I think that's the most likely possibility, unless we just shoot past this support. If SPY just loses like 638, or if the QQQ ends up losing like 566, we could just dump straight down towards the support down here. So be open to that possibility as well. Hopefully, we get some kind of bounce with the FOMC minutes, and then we'll see if we end up turning back down. Be ready for some consolidation tomorrow morning. That I think there's going to be a big move with the FOMC minutes. Let's see if we get a temporary bounce before we end up dumping lower later on or not. Watch your levels just to be safe, and we're going to be very, very patient going about this market. Our virtues are, strategies should not change, right? We should just remain very patient, watch the price action, and watch your levels, and we'll be very, very mindful of what's about to happen. Anyways, that is it for this one. I thank you all so much for listening. Have an awesome rest of your guys' days, and I'll be back tomorrow for Market Open to give you guys another update. Until then, I wish you all nothing but the best, and peace out.